Because one of the things that Q pushes is this whole thing of question everything. Once you start to question what they're giving you, their sources, their material, you realise that a lot of it is either completely fabricated or it's taken out of context.
Hi, my name is Alana Torres, and welcome to EsQape, How I Left QAnon. This is a podcast where I interview ex-QAnon believers about what drew them into QAnon and ultimately how they left. Before Thanksgiving, I interviewed Leila, a 19-year-old university student living in the UK. We connected in QAnon casualties. The moderator of that subreddit actually gave me her username and recommended I reach out, thinking that she might be willing to talk, and indeed, she was. Leila agreed to a recorded Zoom call, and here's that conversation. Hi, Leila. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm interested in when you got into Q, what brought you in initially. In as much detail as possible, if you could go into that first, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So I started getting into QAnon like early in this year because I was in lockdown. We went into lockdown really early in the United Kingdom, like March time, and I had finished my course for like the entire year at my university. And so I had like a lot of time on my hands, like more time than I like ever thought I would. You know, usually around that time I'm busy with like work and stuff, but all of that was like not happening. So I started like going on the internet a lot more, and I came across QAnon. And at this time, like it wasn't censored like anywhere because it wasn't like a big issue. So you could just like search up on Google and you just come across like so many like pro Q sort of like person stuff. So yeah, that's how I got into it really, was just sort of like researching into sort of like what I had already found like online.
Okay, and how did you stumble on it like at first? Like what was your first exposure, if you remember?
Yeah, my first like exposure, like from what I remember, this is my first one, but it was a thread on Facebook, and it was going into like really weird accusations I've like never heard about before. Like it was saying like Tom Hanks is a paedophile and like Hillary Clinton eats children.
Do not
Obviously,
Tom Hanks. I'm so mad that they went after Tom Hanks. He is such a national treasure for us.
I know. Literally, it was insane. Like I was looking at it and I was like, I do not understand like any of this. Like this is just absolutely like like so weird. So I started like the first thing I looked into was actually fragile drip, and that was like the first thing I put into Google was just like one term, and it came across like I think it was like a Reddit thread after that, and it was basically saying like, oh yeah, this is like video on the dark web of Hillary Clinton like tearing the face of this like young girl, and for some reason like I was just like, shit, like this is like legit, and I was like, I don't know, it was just like, I think it was like the circumstances and stuff, but yeah, I was like fully like involved with that sort of like area.
Okay. And so I think in the video that you shared with me too, you mentioned another, it was a different video, right, of a guy in Hollywood?
Yeah, God, yeah, I came across that as well. Isaac Cappy was Hollywood, that like he was a Hollywood like actor, but he wasn't in like a lot of major roles. He was like like a B-list, C-list sort of like celebrity who made like more like cameos in big movies.
Sure.
And I started like looking into him because a lot of people were saying that he like exposed Hollywood, and so I searched him up, and I came across like videos of him like basically calling like again Tom Hanks a paedophile. He mentioned this name called Sarah Ashcraft, who like accused him of paedophilia, and so I was looking into this stuff, and I think my problem was that I couldn't understand why people would lie about that sort of stuff. So I was like, sort of, I just couldn't understand why people would make it up. So I just was so gullible because I believed from that moment, I believed like everything that was thrown my way. Because yeah, it was just like, I don't know, it makes it a lot more gullible.
Interesting. Okay, so you mentioned it was right around when lockdown started in March that you
Yeah.
really got into this. And so, like, what was the rest of your life like? I mean, I know like we went into lockdown as well in like mid-March
Yeah, yeah,
in California, parts of California, not all of it, but
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so, you know, I mean, I know how like weird that felt and isolating and uncertain and, you know, just kind of the stress that a lot of people were going through. But yeah, like, so are you living with family members? You know, yeah, what was the rest of your life like that maybe contributed to you falling in?
Yeah, I was living at home with my parents and my brother, and I sort of, rely on like a routine, like a lot of people, sort of being able to go into university, being able to go out with my friends, and I think it was just like feeling quite trapped, in a way. Like I get along with my parents very well, and I get along with my brother really well, but the thought of having to spend like every moment of every day with them, I was just like, it was like stressful.
Of
And
course.
so yeah, I think I wanted to like escape, most likely through like something more healthy, like, researching or anything that was going to like have a positive impact on my day. But instead I came across Q, and that was, my new obsession that was worse than, a lot of things I could have done.
Sure. Well, you know, you're out of it now, so welcome
Yes.
back, I guess. But yeah,
Thank
like
you.
sort of a thought that I've had while learning about all of this is that, like, to
Yeah.
me, QAnon, this is a little bit of a tangent, but QAnon to me sounds like a creative writing exercise, like gone horribly
Yeah.
wrong, you know?
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
and so, like, uh, part of me has wondered if, like, people who are believers in this are, like, drawn to, like, sci-fi or, like, maybe certain genres that are, like violent or something like that in media and entertainment. I don't know. Does any of that ring true for you at all? Are you a sci-fi fan?
I'm not a sci-fi fan, but I am a big horror fan. And one thing I didn't realize until I got out of Q really was the parallels between so many like horror movies and the things that Q pushes. One of the latest ones, which I saw today, was a person on Reddit said that they had read Doctor Sleep by Stephen King, and they said that Doctor Sleep was basically like almost exactly the same story as what Q pushes. This whole thing of using children to sort of like get power from them. And I was looking at this like I haven't read Doctor Sleep, but that sounds almost exactly what QAnon pushes. So there's definitely a lot of parallels between like movies and the theory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read or seen. Is it a movie too? I haven't.
Yeah, it's a movie. It just I think it came out last year, I think.
Oh my
So
God. Okay, I'm gonna have to watch that now.
I know
Well,
it sounds interesting.
yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's just like a different, yeah, level that I actually like. It's a really recent thought, and I just wondered. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. So, and yeah, I'm not an expert about all the different facets of Q and Q, you know, all the different
yeah,
threads that go
yeah,
on in there. You know, I'm very aware of like the child pedophilia ring, you know, that is discussed. And
yeah, yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, but part of that is to like harvest adrenochrome. Is that correct?
yeah,
To like
yeah,
stay youthful.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
there's that one. And that there's like a satanic cabal trying to take down Trump. Is that
yeah, Trump. Yeah, I
okay?
know it gets bizarre.
Are there any other storylines that kind of have emerged that you became aware of, or are those like the main things?
I think that's like the main sort of like narrative, about, but there's so many like different theories as well.
Yeah.
And sort of like, intertwine with it, like even this stuff about, John F. Kennedy Jr. coming back, and there's so many like mad stuff, and I think it's so massive, and that's why it's like so difficult to, I don't know, like get control of like in your head because it's just like it goes everywhere. But yeah, that's like the main sort of basis is cabals and Satanism and paedophilia, which is definitely what they push the most.
Okay. Did you ever hear about Bohemian Grove?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, I just recently learned about that. So basically, to like do a quick summary, Bohemian Grove is a certain place where a lot of world elites and powerful people, only men, gather for like
Yeah.
2 weeks, and it's like a bacchanal of sorts. There's a lot of partying, but it's also theorized that like the nuclear bomb was discussed there first, and all these
Yeah.
different things. And
Yeah.
I've come to understand that Donald Trump has never been invited to
I
this.
didn't know that. Oh my God.
So I think that is part of the reason that like it's justified that, some people believe that like he's the guy to bring down this satanic cabal because, the people, so they also think that like child sacrifice happens
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right? And so if he's the guy to take it down, obviously he wouldn't be a part of it. But yeah, he's never been invited, and I find that hilarious on different levels. But
Yeah. Behavior was like weird because when I first heard about my InQ, I was
okay,
like, oh, this is like certainly going on. But then quite recently, I read like a post by a worker who used to work there, and she was like a volunteer, and she was like, yeah, none of that stuff goes on. Like it's so boring. Like people don't even realize. And I was like, okay, well, she says it's okay, so I'm going to take her word for it.
okay, awesome. Okay, yeah. So going back to you and your home life,
Yeah,
and you said you had a pretty good relationship with your family
yeah.
during that time. But would people? So would you bring up Q to them and like try to talk to them about it? Like what kind? Yeah, were you trying to have discussions with your family? Were you trying to convince them that this was happening?
I remember bringing it up to my mum about Q, and she had like no idea. She was like, I have no idea what that is. But then when I brought up Pizzagate to her, she was like, oh, I've been watching videos on Pizzagate. And I was like, seriously, like, yeah, I've been watching like all these videos about it, but I don't believe in it. I just watch it because I find it interesting. And so I thought, well, she knows like something about Pizzagate. So I thought, I'll go into QAnon with her. But from the offset, she was like, no, no, I just don't believe in that. That's like impossible. And I kept trying to sort of like ease her into it, like, being like, oh, well, you know about Epstein and you know about like, these other stuff like sex cults. It's not much more extreme than that, which it is, but I was trying to like downplay it. And she was like, yeah, well, maybe. But it was just like, I think it was just like far too far fetched for her. She was like, I just don't believe in that sort of stuff. And so I think I eventually just like gave up with that. But yeah, it was I did try for a while, but I think I found out like it was like pointless because she wasn't budging.
Okay, you got bored. She was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
great. Okay, interesting. So what started to happen? Oh, okay. Also in your video, you talked about like it was kind of traumatic for you. You couldn't um, really trust any news outlet. Can you tell me a little bit about that and like where your mind would go?
Yeah, so I never like never used to like question. Like I always I used to question things, and I don't know a single person who goes, oh yeah, I 1000% trust the media, I 1000% trust the news. Like, we all have like questions and stuff. But getting into Q, like one of their like basic principles is that all the media, except from like, a certain few that they see as all right, all of it is like terrible, and all of it is like, they all worship devils and stuff. And I was looking at that and I was like, oh God, like that's terrifying. So I stopped looking at like basically any reliable news sources, and everything I got about like the real world came from people who were already in Q. And so it became like a really toxic environment because you have no idea what you're looking at, if it's true, if it's not true. Because some of what they're reporting on was like real world situations, like the Epstein case. And so they report on that, which is true, and then they're like throwing like a bombshell about like Hillary Clinton being arrested for like sex trafficking charges. And yeah, it was just so confusing because you literally questioned everything you were looking at, and it just became a really toxic sort of like environment. Yeah, it was horrible.
I'm so sorry. And
Like,
so what began to happen that your mother actually encouraged you to go into therapy?
it was more like I had like a lot of breakdowns because a lot of people who are in Q want this to be true, and they were like, admit that, like, watch it go on. It's going to be like, biblical. It's going to be amazing. And I was like the opposite. I never wanted any of this to be true. I was like, I'm happy with the world as I thought it was, and I prayed like it wasn't true, and I was so terrified. And so I would have like full on breakdowns. I remember for my 19th, which was in July, I literally just sat there and I cried like my entire birthday because I was like an absolute wreck because I was like, the New World Order's gonna happen, the New World Order's gonna happen, all this stuff is gonna happen. And I was so scared. And so my mum was like, you need therapy, like, you need to see someone, you need to like, try and help yourself. And it was a process, but over time I managed to like, recognize QAnon for what it was.
How long were you in therapy?
I was in therapy for a while because the problem is that it's really expensive because I got private therapy, and so I went in it for like a couple of months, and then I sort of like dropped out for a while until I can afford it again, which will be whenever that is. But I do want to get back. But they were really helpful because it was really professional. It was really it was just recognizing feelings and recognizing like how and why you get sucked into them sort of things. And it was more connecting with myself and connecting with like my anxiety and reasons why I was involved with this sort of stuff. And when you start to understand that, it puts things like into perspective. And I was like, I believed in this stuff not because it was true, but because I have really bad anxiety that makes me presume the absolute worst of everything. And so that helped me like over time through like exercises and self-help to eventually get out of it.
That's amazing.
You.
Do you find, or I mean, I guess at this point, so you're fully out of it. Do you ever like check back into like Q groups and just kind of see what they're discussing just to see, is there any of that happens?
Yeah, a lot of the ones that I used to person follow have been like taken down because of like, the social media wipeout thing where they went through and deleted a ton of groups. And so a lot of what I was following has been deleted. However, I do like have like a like a burner account on Twitter that I sort of like check in with things. But I usually check in with like, like people who debunk QAnon, and what they do is that they will post like a tweet that they have posted and then they'll like try and debunk it. And so I'm like consuming what they're saying, but in like a healthier way, because it's a reminder of not to believe everything they say. So if that makes sense, I don't know if that made any sense, but
I think it does, sure. You sort of called yourself gullible before. Do you beat yourself up for the fact that you kind of fell into this for a while, or did you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like because you don't really see that when you're like in there. But I remember one of the first like things I sort of like one of the documentaries I watched was Outer Shadows. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Mm-mm.
But it's like a documentary by like like some people who were going into QAnon. And I remember watching that when it first came out and thinking this is like fully like, you can't debunk this. This is like, basically confirming everything to do with Q. And then I watched it again yesterday actually, and I was like thinking to myself, how did I ever believe in like any of this? Like you could do like one Google search and it will debunk like half of this video. So it was like, I realized that it makes you like dumb you down, like you just believe anything they say. And so I was like, it was interesting to look back on and see where I was like faulting.
You said before that you didn't want any of it to be true, but like but you kind of felt like it was true, like all this stuff was going to happen, but like you didn't want that to be true.
Yeah.
So I guess my question around that is like, when anything that Q ever said like maybe proved to like not actually happen, like I think his first claim was that like Hillary Clinton was going to be arrested, right?
Yeah.
And so like that didn't happen, and it hasn't happened yet. why didn't like those kinds of things like register or kind of like start to bring you out initially?
I think it was because, like at first I didn't actually know the scale of how much Q said didn't happen because I got into it quite late. And so I thought it was like just like a few of their Q drops that hadn't come true. But then I came across a thread a on a Twitter page by QAnon Anonymous, and they were going like, "Oh, look at all this stuff that they predicted," and it was like hundreds of their drops that hadn't come true, which I had no idea about. But so
Oh,
this whole thing about like Hillary, yeah, and so this whole thing about like Hillary Clinton not being arrested at first, I was like, well, that's just like one drop that hasn't come true. I feel like it will do eventually. But then when I saw the scale of how many haven't come true, I was like, yeah, that's insane. Like at least one of these should have come true by now. But
sure. Now, yeah, I guess the majority of Q believers have sort of come within this time period of the lockdown. And so I guess
yeah,
it would be a
yeah,
lot of people like you who came late
yeah,
and, with just everything happening, maybe we're more susceptible to this stuff. But like, yeah, also like I consider myself a gullible person too. I just want you to know. I never got into Q, but
yeah.
yeah, sometimes I believe silly things. But yeah, I just don't want you to like, yeah, continue beating yourself up. I'm sure it's still a process. And you're so young though. You're like 19.
Yeah, 19.
Yeah, you're so young. And so, yeah, what do you think this experience, what do you think this experience will do for you moving forward throughout your life?
I think it's helped in some ways because it's made me like more aware of, circumstances. Like when you get into this sort of stuff, it opens your mind in like a different way because it does make you want to question things, but also in like not always a bad way. Like I'm not questioning things as in like, if you support Biden and you're like, a paedophile or something.
Sure.
But it's it's definitely made me like I think just be more self-aware. I'm not going to believe everything now, and I don't know. It's just I think it's definitely like awakening like a different way. But I think it has helped in that sense. But and it's also a reminder not to get into this stuff again. To always take things like as not fact until there's like proper evidence. And so I think it's hopefully protected me from future similar theories that will inevitably come about. So
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it has
At least
helped.
you're getting it out of your way. Yeah.
Yeah,
When you're really
hopefully.
young, you don't want to fall into this when you're like much older and
Yeah,
set in your ways. Um,
yeah,
One thing that has really interested me lately, because I only just realized that this is like kind of, yeah, gone global here in
yeah,
the
yeah,
UK.
yeah.
And I'm wondering why anybody abroad like cares about Trump and what he's doing really. I mean, other than like I understand the US is like, a major world power,
Yeah,
but to be defending him in such a way, despite plenty of evidence that he's like not a good human,
yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, do you have any insight as to why maybe somebody like in the UK might have like kind of yeah gone on that bandwagon that he's gonna save all the children?
Yeah, I think like firstly, weirdly enough, like obviously you probably don't know this because you're in the US, but the UK is obsessed with American elections. I saw more about the American election than I did about our own election like last winter. Like
Oh,
I'm not even lying. People love American elections, and I don't know
so
why.
dramatic.
Yeah, we really are. We're obsessed with America for some reason. We were never this like interest in like Australia or Canada, but America we're obsessed with. And so but also because, this whole idea of like a new world order, like that would affect the entire world. It wouldn't just affect America, it would affect us globally. And those sort of theories have existed in like every country. And so I think, it was just like Trump is like the center and he was like, what it evolved around. But if it were to go the wrong way and it were to like, you know, have a new world order, then that would affect all of us. And so I think it was more like fear as well. If there was going to be someone who protected us, then it's Trump, and we will be affected by it.
Sure. And so I think I have a basic understanding of what the New World Order is. And so that's basically this idea that there's going to be like one overarching, like authoritarian government that will take control.
Yeah.
That's basically the gist of it, right?
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay. And I think like my dad actually is a huge believer in that. He's been talking to me about that though for like years, and I would always be like, got it. Like
doesn't it?
And he'll be like, okay, I respect your opinion, Now it's my understanding that sort of within the New World Order theories, like COVID-19 has gotten wrapped into that as like a tactic to achieve that, correct? Is that something you
Yeah, definitely. It's like this whole idea that, COVID was created to like control us, because they always push this idea like if a new world order was going to happen, it wouldn't just be like someone would like come down and say, right guys, we're all going to control you now, we're like the new government. It would happen like a process, like over time. And so there's this massive belief within the QAnon community that the COVID-19 pandemic happened because it was created to sort of like control us and for us to like become used to sort of like, the whole thing of like restrictions and mask wearing and not being able to like go out with people. And so yeah, and unfortunately that sort of thing is like very hard to debunk, especially at first, because we didn't really know a lot about Q. COVID. And so because there was a lot of like theories going around anyways, and this was just like one of hundreds of COVID-based theories.
So Trump lost the election. What do you think will happen to the community?
I think it's going to drive a lot of people like deeper, because Trump has always been like this beacon of hope. Like, Trump's in power, and so everything's okay as long as he's in power, because whilst he's president, he's able to, communicate with us, he's able to like take down the deep state. And I think there was a lot of fear in the community when he, when Biden was elected, as president-elect. And so I think if he wins, or, when Trump doesn't get in, I think it's going to drive people completely insane, because they're not going to know who to look up to anymore. And Trump will get less, airtime, obviously. And so I think it's going to make people, I think people are going to go mad. I think it's going to drive a lot of QAnon people insane. But
sure. So while you were still believing, were you hoping, would you consider yourself like a Trump supporter, or like somebody that wanted him to win the presidency at the time when you believed in it?
No, I never liked Trump. Which I'm thinking you're probably happy to hear that. But I never liked him, and I think I was always very stubborn to think that he was doing anything good for us. Like, well, obviously not for me, because I'm not American, but just in general. And so I think it was always worse for me, because I didn't have anyone to look up to, because everyone was like, oh, it's okay because like Trump's in power, he's going to save us all. But I never believed in that. So I was like, who am I going to look up to? Who's going to like, save us if I don't believe Trump is? So I was in like a position where I was like, I don't really want the Democrats to get in, but I don't want Trump to get in. And it was like a lose-lose situation for me. So it was scary.
It almost sounds like Q believers really see Trump as like Jesus.
Oh, definitely.
What is up with that? That is like that is probably what baffles me the most about all of this. But I guess there's so like, and I guess I've been hearing that like Q has kind of infiltrated Christian communities, and I guess that makes some sense. And also I guess like with the pro-life angle and just like, this concern over children generally, which I mean, I'm concerned about children, but like I'm pro-choice, but like there does seem to be like this overlap in certain ways between like being a conservative Christian and also
Yeah.
being into Q. So did you notice like a lot of that, or like, you know, people talking about Trump as like this godsend?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of like people who believe in Q, I definitely saw like a lot of religious people, a lot of Christians who believe in Q, and they were often like use phrases like, "Oh, he was sent down by like God to like help us combat the deep state." But then like now, I'm thinking if that was really going on, and I'm pretty sure like God would interfere rather than Donald Trump. Like, if this stuff was really going on, I think God would have come down by now and gone like, "Hey guys, this is like fucked up." But and then I definitely like, you know, yeah, it was yeah, even like now, what's weird is I think they use like God as a way to justify what they're doing because they will like happily say like, I think Democrats should be hung in public, and that's definitely not Christian. But then they would say like, oh, it's like they'll keep referring to God, and I think it's like a way for them to justify like what they believe in because it is such a violent movement, but it's also very religious, and so it's like it's mind-boggling because it none of it makes sense.
It's
But
contradictory like in itself. So I got your contact information from I think the mod of QAnon casualties,
yeah,
I
yeah.
believe. Um, so are you poking around in those like XQ groups and stuff and like talking to people there now?
Yeah, I do talk to like I try to sort of like help where I can, like because I think it's if I can like offer some advice, even if it doesn't work, I'll feel better about just giving that advice. And so I do sort of like, sort of talk to people and I've spoken to like a few journalists. And so it's yeah, it's definitely something that I've been doing for a while, yeah.
Nice. How many like interviews have you done with, you know, excluding this right now?
I'm not too sure, but I've done quite a few. My first one was in like September time with like Italian media, and that was really nerve-wracking. But I've been doing quite a few now, so I'm sort of like used to it. And
Now you're a pro.
I think I'm a way off from being a pro, but it's given me more confidence in doing this sort of thing. So
Oh,
it's
that's
been
great.
helpful.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you are in those groups, like, yeah, what kind of advice do you give, or yeah, what advice would you give a person who's maybe on the fence about Q?
I think one of like, the best, it's very difficult because obviously it's completely up to you whether or not you sort of go down that path. And in order to get out or to want to get out, you need to want that for yourself. And so, it's very difficult, but I do try to say like, because one of the things that Q pushes is this whole thing of question everything. That is what they've said for so long. And I think that's a good way to start. Like, yeah, question everything, including what they say. Like, don't just believe everything because once you start to question what they're giving you, their sources, their material, you realize that a lot of it is either completely fabricated or it's taken out of context. And so when you start to like look deeper, even a lot of what you think is true just isn't the case. And so I think it's good to try and not believe everything they give you. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people who are like really far down in this rabbit hole though.
Yeah.
And I guess like I've heard a lot of people saying like they're not ever sure like that those people can come out.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you think it's possible, or yeah, what would it take, do you think?
Yeah. I think it's difficult when people are that sort of, deep because it's a bit like religion. If you're like a die-hard Christian, you're not just going to turn around tomorrow and go, oh, I'm a complete atheist now. Like, I think it's difficult, but I think that is hurt for anyone. And this eventually, when it comes out to be absolutely nothing, people are going to have like no other choice because it's physically impossible for a secret this big to go unnoticed forever. Like if there really is a cabal that is like eating children, at one point we're going to know about it. And so, it might not be tomorrow or, in a year's time, but eventually people will realise that it's not going on because it's physically impossible for that to go on and go completely unnoticed. So eventually in time, I think people will understand, hopefully.
Sure. Is there anything that you might want to say that like we didn't touch on at all during this interview?
No, I don't think so. But one thing I would say, and this is like quite important, I think, because I don't think this is touched on enough, and that is to definitely report any abuse you see, because a lot of the time, what QAnon will do is like it will post like real cases of like child abuse and neglect, and they will post like like pictures or images of real children in positions that you shouldn't be seeing. And so I hope that people, if they see that sort of stuff, even if they believe in it, to please report it, because a lot of that stuff is like completely unnoticed, and it's definitely important that you report anything you see which could be harmful. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, I think that was a great conversation. I think we'll just wrap it up there.
Yes.
Thanks again, Leila, for giving me your time. I hope you have
no worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you have a great rest of your night. And once I have this thrown together in a presentable way, I'll send it to you just so you can have it in your roster of interviews.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, cool. Have a good one. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
I was so thankful that Leila sat down and gave me some time to discuss her experience with QAnon. I wished during the conversation that I emphasized that, after all this, she's a stronger person. So I messaged her that afterwards. She thanked me. And yeah, I just hope this conversation can help somebody out there. So if you like this content, if you want to see more, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and thanks. I'll see you next time.